It is our pleasure to be joined by a man that was one of Time's 100 Next this year. Yeah, 100 of the rising stars on planet Earth, and he's one of them, ladies and gentlemen. Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt is in the house. Mayor Holt, how we doing, man?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. How are you guys?
No complaints here. No complaints here. Unless you want to talk college football playoff. I mean, we could find
Oh,
complaints
good
there
Lord.
if you'd
Yeah,
like, but
not enough
otherwise
time for
great.
that.
Yeah, you've got enough stuff to worry about, man. Let's start here. A rather important vote on December 12th. How you feeling?
I feel good. We've been polling this for a year, and really I can speak with, a high level of confidence that a strong majority of Oklahoma City residents want to approve this vote. They want to build a new arena. They want to keep the Thunder here and the concerts and everything else that being a big league city has meant to our little corner of the world. But we gotta go vote. And I mean, look, that's partly why I'm here tonight. It's just to make sure people know that this is coming up. They have the date circled on their calendar. It's Tuesday, December 12th. It is coming right up. And everyone in Oklahoma City needs to come out and be heard. I'm probably speaking to an audience right now that gets it. But that's meaningless if you don't cast your vote. So that's the bottom line. But let's go, and obviously this interview is not going to be 45 seconds long, so let's talk about a few more aspects of it. But that's the bottom line: is the game day is here.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest things that people are maybe wrestling with is why we need a new arena. What's the problem with the one we have?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, there's various answers to that. But the reality is we have the smallest arena in the NBA by square footage. And I always add that. Nevertheless, people always seem to hear seating capacity. That is not the issue. The issue is square footage, which is actually in many ways more important, because that's really where a modern user of a modern arena makes their money. Whether it's sports team or a concert promoter, the square footage defines your ability to have all that ancillary hospitality, retail, and dining that really drives revenue. So if your arena is not offering that opportunity, people don't want to have concerts there. They'd rather go somewhere else, and they'd rather not play their sports ball there, right? So they're going to take this team to a city with a better arena in a bigger market. Our first challenge is simply that we're such a small market. We're the 42nd largest market in the United States in a league that has 30 teams. So obviously, we're always going to be climbing uphill. But when you add on top of it such a small arena, it's really challenging. Also, the arena is $200 million of investment now over its life. That's real money to you and me, but that is pretty small potatoes in the arena world. The Clippers are about to move into a $2 billion arena. Dallas spent 2x what we spent 20 years ago. I mean, their arena would probably cost $800 million today. So we've just never really had a true NBA arena, certainly not an upper echelon arena. But the bottom line is all of those things are coming to a head now because our lease expired. And so you're at that moment where, you're trying to extend a relationship. And if what you're offering is a small market and the league's worst arena, or maybe the second worst arena, if you're being generous, you're not going to get a long-term lease extension. And that's been the case here. The Thunder, are not going to sign a long-term lease to play in Oklahoma City in the arena that we have. And neither is any other NBA team. So we had to make this choice now. The time is right for it. And the reality is, even though some people kind of feel like it was just yesterday that we opened this arena, it wasn't. It was 21 years ago. And most NBA arenas, I guess I should say all but one NBA arena is 31 years or younger. So given that this will take the better part of a decade to implement this plan, we're going to have an old NBA arena by the end of this, in addition to the other liabilities I already mentioned. So that's the challenge. That's why we need a new arena. And we're also seeing ourselves become less and less competitive in the regional concert market. I mean, anytime that an act is going to a smaller market in our region, like Tulsa, to perform, that's a failure of our arena, right? Like that makes no logical business sense. Why would they go to a smaller market? But they're doing it because our arena is just suboptimal. But fortunately, we have an answer for all of this. We've been able to come to an agreement with the Thunder that keeps the team here for basically 30 years, plus, beyond 2050. And we don't even have to raise taxes to do it. So it's kind of like such an incredible win-win that I think it's a no-brainer, obviously. But there's lots of aspects to it, lots of education that has to happen, and we've been doing that over the course of the last year or two. But I think we've gotten to a point where the people of Oklahoma City are ready to move forward, make this commitment, secure our status as a big league city for another generation, and then we can worry about other things. But this has meant so much to us as a city, and I think everybody knows that. And it is at stake December 12th. I need everybody to have a sense of urgency. This is our shot to secure this city's status as a big league city beyond 2050. We're not likely to get another shot at it.
When you guys have gathered all the economic data that you've been able to gather, what type of economic impact would this new arena have on Oklahoma City?
Yeah, in many ways, it's about sustaining. I do think we'll definitely see some growth, especially in the concert business, if we can get a new arena. But on the pro sports side, it's about sustaining what we have, right? And so, economists have come up with a number that it's $590 million of annual economic impact to Oklahoma City for having the Thunder here and having the concerts that we have. That's every single year, $500 million. 3,000 jobs they tie to that. And that's the direct economic impact. That's the stuff you can really measure when you look at what's happening at the arena, what's happening directly with the team, and then what's happening at restaurants and hotels and in the hospitality industry. I often, though, point out there's like this whole other major category that's a little harder to quantify, but it's kind of the one we can all see with our own eyes. And it's just that intangible benefit that having a big league team has meant to Oklahoma City. Our GDP has grown 62% over the last 15 years. City proper, we've moved from the 31st largest city to the 20th largest city. And everybody in Oklahoma City knows, anyone who's lived here for any length of time knows that from dining to arts to diversity, this city has experienced a sea change since 2008. And all of that comes with like moving into the upper echelon of American cities. But that status is not assured, especially when you're the 42nd largest market. So, but nobody talks to job creators or investors more than me. And especially if they're coming from outside our borders, it is apparent to me on a daily basis that I wouldn't be having those conversations if we didn't have a major league sports team. It's your gateway to a whole new level of opportunity that we didn't enjoy for our first 100 years or so of our history. But everybody knows that these last 15 years have been an amazing renaissance for our community. And it is absolutely goes hand in hand with the Thunder's arrival. And even if you've never been to a basketball game and you could care less about that, it's affected every other aspect of life in Oklahoma City. So $590 million is the official number, but I always say it's so much more than that. It affects everything else. And anybody with eyes and who has lived here for more than 5 minutes can see what a difference it's made. And we don't want to lose that. We don't want to go back to being Amarillo. And when you're kind of at the edge of this world that we entered 15 years ago, you have that danger. And that's why this is so important.
That sounds like a hell of a campaign speech. Don't go back to Amarillo. Is there? I know there's a little bit of a counter argument out there. I saw the statement put out. I think it was 20 of the professors that put out a counter argument or counter research. Is there any one or handful of arguments that you've seen or heard that you'd like to be able to address that you think maybe the information's not right or there's a different way to look at it?
Well, there's a ton of misinformation in this. And even that, I saw that letter and, God, there was just one after the other of factual errors that are not subjective, not opinions. There's just misinformation most of the people that I know of that signed that letter that you're referencing have made a career of fighting sports and fighting sports venues in cities. And, you know, I've learned in this process that you have this sort of like cottage industry of sports haters that sort of parachute into your town whenever you think about making this investment in yourself. But, you know, the widely respected economists in Oklahoma City that people know, you know, who work in business or work in, you know, the study of economics in our community have all come out publicly validating all of this. And we used one of the most well-known, well-respected firms in the nation to come up with the figures I just talked about of $500 million of annual economic impact. So yeah, I mean, like anything, there's like, okay, well, you've got your economists, we've got our economists. You know, everybody's going to have you know, dueling arguments. My view, though, of the attacks that you've seen, you know, people talk about, you know, the team contribution. They want more from the team. Well, who doesn't want more from the team? You know, like that's a silly thing in a sense. I mean, of course, we asked for and presented many different options, but ultimately I get, you know, how we ended up where we are, because first of all, we're the 42nd largest market, and markets our size don't get big offers like they do in Detroit and San Francisco. And trying to compare us to those markets is just not fair. It's certainly not a realistic assessment of where we stand. You know, the markets in the NBA that are our peers, like Memphis and New Orleans, got zero team contribution, right? So we got $50 million. That's better than they got. And it's also $50 million more than we've ever received before. And that's the other thing. It's a little quirky, is like, you know, when did this expectation get set that other people are very likely to build our arena for us, right? We've been building our own arena for 100 years. This is the 4th proposed arena in Oklahoma City history, and the 3 previous arenas were built 100% with tax dollars. We own it. The Thunder and anybody else are tenants in it. The $50 million that they have offered as a donation is truly that. It's a donation. They don't get anything for it. They don't own it. And they use the building 12 to 15% of the time. You know, I always think like, well, if they're supposed to pay, like, why should I invoice Elton John? Should I invoice Paul McCartney? I mean, like, you know, what world do you expect all the users of your facility to pay for it? Again, I'm the mayor. I will take any donation anybody will give to the city coffers, but I also have to live in reality, and I can't sell fantasy to people. You know, this is the deal we're likely to get in a market our size. And by the way, there is not as if there's a bunch of other NBA teams calling me offering more money, right? This is the deal on the table from the only team that has any interest in being in Oklahoma City. And the only reason they have any interest in being in Oklahoma City is that they are owned by Oklahoma City people. But they're not going to own the team forever, because that's just the way it works. And eventually we're going to have to fight even more in the free market. And that's why we need to get this lease nailed down with them. And we need to take this deal, because there's not going to be a better deal. Any deal after this is going to be worse if we even get an offer at all, because we're also competing, not just, you know, getting compared to our peers in the NBA is one thing, but we're really competing with the 18 larger metropolitan statistical areas that don't have a team. 18 larger metros that don't have a team right now. Most of them have better arenas than we currently have, and some of them have better arenas than we're even proposing, right? Seattle got their act together after losing this team, and they now have $1 billion arena, and they're the 14th largest market in the United States. The list of cities that don't have an NBA team, like Nashville and Las Vegas and Seattle and San Diego and Cincinnati and Jacksonville and Kansas City, is pretty terrifying, you know? And to think what would happen if this failed, and suddenly you're kind of in a bidding war, because that's what would happen. You know, you'd suddenly get, you know, all these cities throwing in their offers. You'd have ownership groups from literally around the world, you know, from everywhere from New York hedge funds to Russian oligarchs would be making offers, you know, for this team, especially considering our lease is about to completely expire. You know, that's not a bidding war we can win. And so if you think you have some issues with this deal, I would say compare it not to a better deal, because that ain't happening. Compare it to the prospect of not having this team. So if your thought is, I'm going to banish this team to another market to show how I feel about this offer, well, the team is going to move to a bigger market with the nicer arena and make more money. So you've really shown them, right? But we will lose out on $590 million of annual economic impact and all the other things that this team and our big league status has meant to us. So you've got to be a realist. You've got to be kind of calculating in this deal. And you've got to understand where we stand and what we have to lose and what we have to gain. So, other arguments that I've heard, obviously you have to make a decision, and that's probably the most reasonable thing that I respect, is if somebody just says, I get it, you're not wrong about all these things you said about the economic impact, but ultimately, like, it's just not important to me. I think what I'd say to that is, I understand that maybe you want to do other things with that. Well, you think you want to do other things with that money. The problem is, if the tax is somehow managed, first of all, it's not like the tax is going to be used on homelessness if this fails, right? Then you still have to like move forward and get people convinced to work on those other issues and have another vote on it. But even if that were the case, it's not like the money's still just really sitting there. When you lose $590 million out of the community every year, you're kind of seeing like an economic contraction that doesn't make the other things you want to do possible anymore. I often ask people, if you care about the social issues in this community, you care about helping people at all socioeconomic levels, we're doing a lot of that right now. And we weren't doing that in 1985 or 1995. What we're doing today is unprecedented in our city's history. And it's not a coincidence that it's happening now. It's, again, another benefit of having this economic growth that we've seen. It is not as if, let's use Amarillo, let's beat up on Amarillo again. It's not as if Amarillo, not having this burden of having to pay for an arena for a major league sports team is now using that money that they have to have the world's greatest social safety net, right? The reality is small towns and mid-sized cities just don't have the resources to do the stuff that we're doing right now. And we have those resources because the Thunder are here. So I always say, look, I'm the architect of Maps 4. Like, I care a lot about that stuff. I'm the guy that was passionately advocating just like this 4 years ago for, affordable housing for the homeless and the Palomar Family Justice Center for victims of domestic violence and mental health crisis centers and a civil rights center and all of that. And that's why I'm voting yes on December 12th, because all of those opportunities go away with the economic impact leaving town as well. So that's really important to me. I guess maybe the last thing is when people say, and this I consider to really be misinformation, when they say, well, this team isn't going anywhere. That's just delusion. And I think this is an audience and you are guys who understand the reality of the situation. This team's lease expired earlier this year. We have 3 years left, and they only signed that extension to have this conversation, to hold this vote. We know how we got this team, and you can't present yourself as the 42nd largest market with one of the worst arenas and expect to have a long-term viable future with the National Basketball Association. It is what it is. I can't tell you exactly how it'll all play out, but I know that in Seattle, they had all these warning signs along the way, and they kept saying no, and they kept saying no. And then one day they woke up and their team had been bought by a group of men from Oklahoma City. And basically at that point, the story was over. You don't get this like last chance after last chance after last chance to do what you have to do, especially in a market this size. This is our opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity. It was a miracle that we got the team in the first place. It'll be kind of a minor miracle to keep the team, but I really believe that this is a win-win when you consider how the deck is stacked against us, that we can do this. We've got the we've got the commitment from the team to stay for basically 30 more years, and we can do it without raising taxes. That's why we've got to take this deal.
I am a firm believer that you just got to have some luck when it comes to timing in life. How much does it help that the Thunder are really good now? I mean, you look at it, 13-6 as we record this, they're the 2 seed in the West, Mayor Holt. Like, how do you think what the team looks like right now factors into this vote?
Well, it's funny how quickly this turns, because I feel like we might have come together when I first kind of rolled out this conversation about a year and a half ago. And at that time, the team was very much perceived as being mired in a rebuild. And certainly a lot of the sports commentary I remember very vividly at the time was, well, gosh, this is really bad timing. This is really a bad time to bring this up when the team is so bad. And here we are. it's just a year and a half later, and now everybody's like, wow, great timing. The team is so good. So of course, I have to be consistent. I was pretty adamant back then. I said, look, you cannot cast a 30-year vote or make a 30-year decision based on the on-court performance of this team right now, right? They're going to go through many ups and downs over the next 3 decades. So I have to, in a sense, say the same thing, but I am a realist. I get it that people are probably in a little better mood right now. They can more readily see the potential of this current team. They don't want to miss out on that. They don't want to see that, that championship parade happen in another city 4 years from now. So yeah, I get it. I think it does help. But ultimately, I want to be consistent that people are making a generational decision on December 12th for our city's future. And it's so much, obviously, it's about so much more than what's happening on the court. But yeah, nobody's more thrilled than I am, and I'm sure you two join me as well with how great the team is right now. It's a lot of fun to watch.
It is. It is. I just that's all great information. Could you walk us through quickly, logistically, what it looks like should the vote pass? When, where, how, how's all that going to work out?
Yeah. Well, we'll probably spend 2024. We'll be hammering out the final terms of the lease. The Thunder have basically put the basic terms that matter most to everybody in the letter of intent that they signed and the council passed, and then I signed. But now you have to turn that into, a legal document that's dozens of pages long. And then also simultaneously, we'll probably be selecting a site. It's going to be downtown, as I've said many times, but we got to kind of nail down the specific location. And there's, more than one potential option. And then we'll move into design, which that's in and of itself probably a couple-year process, and construction will certainly be a couple-year process. The letter of intent states that we all mutually agree we want to open this arena in 2029, and that's actually pretty aggressive, right? Because I happen to know historically that there was about 10 years for every one of our previous 3 arenas between the vote and the opening. And we would be trying to pull it off in about 6 or 7. So we'll see how it goes. But that was a necessary condition to secure this agreement with the Thunder, and that also means, because the tax won't take effect until 2028, that we'll do a little bit of short-term borrowing, but all of that is covered within the tax. That won't come from any other source than the tax itself. But the tax will start collecting in 2028. And the reason for that is that it's going to take the place of the MAPS 4 tax when the MAPS 4 tax fully runs its course. And that's why it's not a tax increase. And that's kind of I think that's responsive to your question. That's sort of the TikTok of the months and years ahead. It's in a sense, like the political issue will be settled, and that is very difficult. But there's still a lot of work that remains.
One thing that I've heard many people, and I think maybe it's just the emotional attachment to the building itself with the history of the team up to this point. Do you know what would happen to what is now Paycom Center, what used to be the Ford Center? Do you know what used to be Chesapeake? Do you know what would happen to that building once the arena is done?
No, what I tell people is that's the last domino to fall in all of this, that when Paycom becomes our second arena. And it's kind of best to keep an open mind for a little bit longer and, just kind of let that play out. If you had been asking my predecessor, Mayor Cornett, 10 years ago, what would happen to the Cox Center, which was our convention center at the time, when it was replaced, I guarantee you he wouldn't have told you, I think it'll be a film studio, but that's what it is today, right? So it's like, keep an open mind about the future, whether it has a different purpose, whether it's run as a second arena, or whether it simply, becomes the site of a future development of some kind. I think all those things have to stay on the table for a while, and it's best not to try to jump ahead to decisions, but let them be made when they should be made. So we don't know. We truly don't know is the answer, but I think that's the appropriate answer at this stage. It's best to kind of let things play out and to get closer to that time when we really have to make a decision about Paycom's future.
December 12th. I mean, that's the big day. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's exciting times. You know, I think it's easy to see what downtown. You don't have to look very far back to see what it looked like previous, and you know, it's I think it's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, here's the bottom line. Like, there's really a very simple question on the ballot on Tuesday, December 12th. Is, do you want to be big league or not? Do you want to have an NBA team or not? Do you want to have all these concerts or not? You know, all those details matter, and that's what we're elected or appointed to do and worry about. But, you know, keep your eye on the big picture. You know, like I had somebody the other day like tweet at me like, well, if I don't know where the site location is, you know, that's a real big issue for me. I may have to vote no. And I'm like, really? Like, you know, like you really thought that through. Like, you're going to let the Thunder leave town because you haven't figured out where the site is going to be. You know, I know that humans are capable of that, right? Like, that's why we have cliches like not seeing the forest for the trees or whatever. I get it that's human nature, but like, I'm asking people, keep your eye on the big picture. There's a reason that the slogan of this campaign is keep OKC big league, because that's the real issue on the table. That's where we got to keep our focus. And so as long as people stay focused on what really matters here and what is at stake, and have a sense of urgency and take it seriously and get out to vote. Don't just let, you know, the polls speak for us, because they don't count. We got to get out there and show how we really feel. And I don't just want to win. I want to run up the numbers, because I want to show the country that we're serious, that we have emerged as a top 20 city, and we have every intention of staying there, you know. You guys may know Malcolm Gladwell. You know, he's a very famous.
I heard what he said.
You heard what he said. Yeah. It's like, to me, like, so for your listeners, you know, like a few weeks ago, he went on Bill Simmons and he said, basically, he said, well, I'm looking at Oklahoma City's population. I don't really think they should even have a team. That's a consensus view everywhere but Oklahoma City, you know, and I obviously, you know, bristle at that. And so I don't just want to get 51%, you know, I want to really show this world and this country that Oklahoma City is determined to keep investing in ourselves. We're determined to keep being a big league city. So I just encourage people to get out. And maybe on that note, if I can leave you with a few practical comments, you know, you can vote early Thursday and Friday at the county election board. And then, of course, on election day itself, Tuesday, December 12th, polls are open as always from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. As long as you're in line, I don't necessarily expect lines, but as long as you're standing there at 7, they will let you vote. And please remember that everybody who's registered in Oklahoma City can vote, regardless of political party. And also, really important factor here, there's a lot of people who live in parts of Oklahoma City that have zip codes or school districts that share a name with a neighboring community. And so they often think they live in Edmond or Moore or Yukon when they really live in Oklahoma City. And I think some of our best supporters for this initiative are in those areas. So I really try to remind people, you know, check to verify where you really live, because anyone who lives in Oklahoma City, regardless of your zip code or your school district, can vote in this election. And one of the best tells is to go look at your trash can. If your trash can says Oklahoma City, you live in Oklahoma City. If you want to tell people you live in Edmond, that's between you and them. But on election day, if your trash can says Oklahoma City, you live in Oklahoma City, please vote. We need your support. Don't take it for granted. We don't want anybody to wake up on December 13th with regret, while 18 mayors and ownership groups are all swooping in because they see blood in the water, and we're trying, you know, to scramble and try to figure out what our future is going to look like. Let's avoid all that, and let's get ahead of it. Let's make a strong statement. Let's pass this. Let's stay a big league city so you and I can keep talking about what's going on the court for years to come.
Well, I know it's going to be a busy week, Mr. Mayor, but I think we're going to be celebrating next Tuesday night. Best of luck. And as someone that was born and raised and, you know, lives in Oklahoma City now, I appreciate everything you're doing, the effort that you and your team are putting forth to get this thing passed, because the Thunder has become one of the most important things in my life. And I think a lot of people in Oklahoma City, sports people at least, feel the same way. So I'm confident, man, but I like it. We want this thing to be a landslide. I love what you said. Run the numbers up. Let's go.
Hey, when I ran for mayor, I called Barry Switzer and asked for his endorsement. And he delivered to me his famous line. It was like, talking to Bruce Willis, and he says, yippee-ki-yay or something, right? Barry Switzer said to me on the phone, let's hang half 100 on him. And what I loved about that is actually, what you need to win an election is in fact half 100. So yes, let's do more than that, obviously, in this case, but let's hang half 100 on him and let's keep our thunder.
Appreciate you. Thanks for the time, Mayor.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a great night.